Hello, this is Orchidxmantis. It's another gallant podcast. We are here with Fiona Digney. Mm-hmm. Yes. And Caitlin Fahey Crow. We are Orchidxmantis, and this is another podcast. There are no observations, only facts. Why? It's spring, so there are lots and lots of licenses that are not usually available. So take yours and have your way.
All right.
So Fiona, we are going to start with the Pivot questionnaire.
Okay.
Made famous by Inside the Actor Studio, James Lipton, etc. What is your favorite word?
Perspicacious.
Ooh.
Right now, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a very new word to me. Don't be thinking that my vocabulary is out of this world, because it's not.
Okay, but I was very impressed.
I've been playing a lot of bananagrams or bananagrams lately, and perspicacious is a really great word because it has 2 S's, 2 I's, 2 P's, and 2 C's, and it has all of the vowels.
Oh,
and
so
it's a
maximum
really nice
points.
Word. Yeah, and it's a nice word, because it means like an unusual level of perception and being able to really see into a situation and have good judgment about it. So it's something that I aspire to and something that I see in people that I aspire to be like.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's great for bananagrams.
I like it. I've never played bananagrams. We'll have to get on that.
It's fantastic. It's actually perspicacious.
With an E.
I always have to think about it.
Perspication.
Perspicacity, perspicacious, yeah.
Cool. I like it. What is your least favorite word?
Well, I did watch Natasha's podcast, and I'm going to have to agree. Moist. Terrible word. Should
So
be
bad.
struck from the vocabulary.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed. In any context, even when talking about cake.
Yeah, it just makes me not want to eat the cake.
Yep.
Terrible.
You don't like moist cake?
Well, I do, but I just really, it's fine if it has that quality. I just don't want to describe it as such.
What's a
Spongy.
Spongy, yeah.
Spongy or,
spongy.
I don't know. There's got to be another word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a thesaurus.
Agreed. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck. It's so versatile. And, Australians say fuck all the time. And I have to warn my students when I'm teaching that I am Australian. We swear a lot more than Americans. And it's just for emphasis. It's not out of anger or at you. It's just because it's fucking awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to have to, yes, because these are sometimes just scribbly notes to myself. They might not make complete sense as a full question. Ah, yes. What is contemporary music? Follow-up question, why is it important? And this is just in your opinion. It doesn't have to be
Oh, man. Oh, God, I definitely don't want this answer on the internet. There'll be too many people who crucify me.
No. This is
what
just
is contemporary
in your
music and what is it? What is its purpose?
Yeah, what is its purpose? Because I get that question a lot. Why should I come to a La Jolla Symphony concert? I just want to hear Beethoven. That kind of thing.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's like when people ask me what I do, I still can't figure that out. I can't explain it. It's very difficult to explain.
Sure.
I end up saying, well, I don't do this and I don't do this and I don't usually do this. Okay, contemporary music. Contemporary, by the definition of contemporary, it's like whatever's happening now, right? So it's whatever is new. But then we look at things from 100 years ago, like we look at Varese and think, oh, well, that's contemporary too, because it has a sound to it that is I think challenging to the average person on the street. That's what I would say it would be.
Yes.
And so sometimes you can listen to music that's hundreds of years old and it will be challenging to the average person on the street. And so I tend to take a pretty broad view of what contemporary music is, and I think it's important because it helps people to get out of their comfort zone a little bit, and I think that that's really useful. because I think that what's that confirmation bias? When that Facebook takes advantage of confirmation bias.
Yes,
like it'll see what you click on, and then it'll show you more things like that, and it actually ends up just reinforcing your existing
in an
beliefs.
Echo chamber of
Exactly. Yeah. And so you never get challenged, which means you never grow and you never develop as a human, and it also really serves to isolate people. And so what I see my role in performing contemporary music is to find that way in to that person's world, and then just expand it a little bit. Some contemporary musicians, I think, like to just completely obliterate someone's idea of what they thought music was. Or I take a slightly more gentle approach. I try to find a little bit of a connection and then work from there, rather than just. I don't want to rub people the wrong way.
Sure.
I want them to enjoy the challenge that I give them, and I want them to want to come back for more, rather than be like, whoa, okay, that was enough new music for me for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So being a little more of a conduit, or helping bridge the gap, making it accessible in some way to someone who might not have the skills to access it themselves. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool.
I have an observation.
Yeah.
I don't know what the contemporary example of someone like Lil Jon might be, but I don't know who made this sound. Excuse me while I go off mine. This one's like, oh, oh.
Oh, I think that's Migos.
Okay, Migos, excuse me. Who is
don't quote me on that, though.
But you're playing anything. It's like, is that tonal?
All right.
I'm into it. Should we spin the wheel again?
Sick.
Oh!
23.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's talk about your relationship with commissioned works. And
all right.
Do you have a lot of experience commissioning works or having works commissioned for you?
Not really. I've commissioned 3 pieces, but I've been involved in lots of premieres of works. So my commissioning experience is very limited, and at 3 different scales, which is really interesting. So the first one was I just emailed a bunch of composers who I'd never met before and was like, hey, this is who I am. Can you write me a thing? I don't have any money. And I found someone who wrote me a thing, and it was great. Fantastic. Then someone who I knew a little bit and paid them a fairly decent amount of money. But then I couldn't find a place for the piece in my repertoire, but I still have it, and I would like to go back to it. I'm not sure if anyone else has performed it.
Did you ever perform it, or you did?
No, I never performed it. I worked on it for a while, but it was too far outside of what I was doing at the time, and I just couldn't find my way into it. A lot of performers can pick up a piece of music, when they're interpreters, when you're picking up someone else's music, and can just learn it without knowing anything about it, and will perform it and just make something of it. I'm bizarrely a little bit precious about these things. I need to feel like I can do a really good version of that piece before I will spend a lot of time and energy on it, which I probably should just get over myself and start to just learn things for the sake of learning things. But and then the biggest commissioning project was someone that I had worked with before, who is a fantastic percussionist and theatre director and composer, and it was a great collaboration with the La Jolla Symphony, and it was a really great learning experience to go through the process of figuring out how to commission someone for a concerto, which is a really big deal, and then find an orchestra who will play it, and figuring out all of the internal dynamics of that situation.
Yes. Well, as you can see, I have
God.
that particular situation underlined on my notes. Just because I wanted to ask you a little bit more about it. I played in the orchestra for that particular piece. And I know what it felt like from the orchestral perspective, at least from the cello section perspective, putting it together. And we get a lot of new works that we're starting literally from scratch. We don't have a reference recording. We don't have anything to go by. We're just here it is, and we figure our way through it. And this one was particularly challenging for the orchestra because there were tons of rhythmic unisons that were very tricky. And so it was, there was just a lot of frustration, I think, from most people getting through that.
Yeah.
And a couple times where it was like, I'm not even sure if we're going to make it. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pull this off.
Yeah.
So what was your experience in putting that piece together as the soloist?
Oh, wow. A number of things. One is that we nearly pulled it a few weeks before. You don't know this, but we nearly, or maybe it was like a month or two before, we nearly pulled it and replaced it with something else because there were some pretty major misunderstandings about the score and what I was comfortable with and what I wasn't comfortable with, and so some pretty major edits happened in the last couple of weeks, and so the piece ended up, what was performed was actually really wildly different from what was originally planned. And so in that last week before the premiere, there was a lot of changes. As you may remember, there were a lot of cuts that happened.
Yes.
And the other thing that was really different for me was that there was a lot of improvisation. And so at the beginning, it was at the beginning of, Oh, no, it wasn't at the beginning of the concerto. It was somewhere in between. There were 4 wooden chairs. It started off as 3. 4 wooden chairs that I ended up playing on. And so it was a lot of choreography and using these objects as percussion instruments. But it was all improvised, and I have no background in dance or theatre or anything. But the composer and I worked together a lot on how to move and how to improvise on chairs, and that was actually really, really helpful. But I was really fortunate that the orchestra, I think, already knew me and thought that I was okay because I felt the frustration from the orchestra, and I really felt for you guys, but everyone was so positive and encouraging from the orchestra. It was really nice. And of course, Steve Schick was conducting, and he is my doctoral advisor, and I've known him for 15 years or something.
Wow.
And he's been a mentor of mine for a really long time. And so to have my doctoral advisor / percussion teacher conducting, and he was also old friends with the composer, it was actually a really nice thing. I felt really supported and encouraged, which is great because it's scary as fuck to play a concerto.
Yes, extremely. We'll have 2 questions. One has to do with commissions and collaborations, but then I just wanted to talk specifically to this piece. I couldn't remember, did you have thimbles on your fingers for the...
I did.
You were, okay.
Yeah, I had many, many bruises from playing on the chairs, and I just couldn't, the composer, he would come up, he's got big hands, and he's constantly using his hands as implements for percussion instruments. And so he would rock up to the chair and he'd just go whack, and it'd be this amazing sound. And I'd rock up to the chair and I'd hit it as hard as I could, and all I'd get is a massive bone bruise.
Right.
And he's like, come on, can't you hit it harder? And I'm like, I can't, And so I got a lot of bruises on my knuckles. And then my solution was to get thimbles because I just couldn't make enough sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was in pain.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a physiological
it's horrible,
limitation there, but
and so many other musicians, if you asked a violinist to do something like that, okay, so go whack the fuck out of a chair and then go play your violin.
Right.
They're going to look at you like you're crazy. But a percussionist, we're kind of expected to be able to do that and then go to a marimba and pick up mallets and
have the dexterity and be fine. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Wow. The behind the scenes. So circling back a little bit to that, how involved were you in the initial creation of the piece? Was it collaborative, or was it intended to be collaborative at the beginning? That you would have input in terms of what you wanted, what you were comfortable with,
right?
The types of medium being used, that kind of stuff. Was that the initial goal?
Yeah. Well, I'd worked with the composer on a existing theatre percussion piece, a Cargill piece, in 2014, and we had worked really well together. I loved everything that he did. I felt very confident that he would write a really cool piece. And then in 2016, I brought him to San Diego and we did some workshops for a couple of days, and we spent, I think, 3 or 4 days all day, every day for 4 days, just with chairs. No percussion instruments, just with chairs. And it was just him coaching me through how to move on chairs and how to play chairs. Yeah, and he's really great to work with like that. And so in that process...
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah, of course.
Can you describe the chairs that you worked with? Because there are a lot of different types of chairs, and they are all
I bought them on Amazon. They're wooden chairs, very square, so like a flat
Backs
seat.
on 'em?
Yeah, flat
No
seat.
arms?
Backs, no arms. They have like 3 or 4
Like rungs.
horizontal rungs so that you can like
So nice.
guiro down them. Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty good. I did have to have spares because I broke some.
Sick.
We had to like drill some extra screws in there to reinforce them, and they still. The last performance, I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to smash one. I'm pretty sure this is going to be the time. Yeah.
So now when you see a good chair, like, you have more appreciation. You're like, that's a well-made chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's one of those things that as a percussionist, I tend to go and hit things to see what they sound like. I'll be in Costco and I'll just like hit that little rice bowl to see what it sounds like,
Right.
or that metal bowl or whatever that thing is. And my husband now does it too, which is hilarious because he drives tugboats for a living, and now he'll go into a store and pick up a wine glass and go ding, and he's like, this one sounds good, which is really lovely.
Do you want this?
Yeah, it's lovely. Commissioning project, what was the process like? So we spent a couple of days just working on chairs, and we had a number of conversations about what the piece was going to be like. It was going to have video elements, and it was going to have some electronic elements as well. Those eventually got cut. And it was going to have a large text portion. And that was the major cut towards the end that led to the other cuts.
Got it. Mm-hmm. Is the percussion world a boys' club, or did it used to be?
Oh.
And is sort of, as a cellist, I almost kind of have noticed and still kind of think, I think probably to my own detriment a little bit, about some of the instruments being somewhat gendered. Not that I personally believe that, but I feel like a lot of the time I see a lot of like brass players, percussionists. Those are the dudes. Mm-hmm. It's getting better, but in your opinion, what is that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because I have spoken to a few people about this, and in Australia, my undergraduate program, I think we had 25 percussionists, and I want to say 19 of them were female.
Whoa.
And so in Australia, my experience is that there's actually more females playing percussion than males. Yeah. And then in America, definitely more males. I did my master's in Alaska and doctorate down here, and in both programs, mostly men. And I was talking to someone about this, and the theory that we have is that although, America and Australia, both colonized countries, America has like the marching band tradition, which is more militaristic, so therefore a little bit more masculine. And then Australia, we don't have marching bands in Australia. Like the military does, but we don't in high schools, we don't in colleges. And we're like geographically closer.
Why is that? Excuse me.
Why is that?
Why do you I don't care about, marching band, except for the glockenspiel.
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
You can wear.
Oh, the wearable.
But, and a couple other things. But being a pianist, that's not an opportunity for me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really get into it. But why is there no marching band in Australia?
I don't know, but my theory is that because we're geographically closer to Asia, where percussion instead of from... So, like, the European tradition of percussion is that it's like Janissary music, so like Turkish... Ottoman Empire on the backs of horses kind of deal, like riding into battle. But then the Asian history, and this is a grand generalization, but the Asian history with percussion is more about ritual and spirituality and community and reflection. And so I think Australia kind of took that side of things on, which isn't necessarily masculine or feminine, but I think it just made... it meant that percussion is just more acceptable and accessible for ladies. And and so you're not in high school and seeing this like marching band tradition, which is very masculine. And those guys, you know, like they play really fast. I can't play fast, but they play really fast, and it's all about rudiments and all about licks and about athleticism in playing.
Sure, like the jocks of the
drum
world.
The jocks of the drum world. And so in Australia, we don't really have that. And so I think it means that the girls growing up who want to play percussion aren't like thwarted or discouraged by that overt athleticism.
Cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I never thought about
Yeah.
that difference. I think a lot of the time, like we think, I don't know, as an American, it's like, oh, we share a language. And so there are just like lots of similarities, but I think probably less so than we might think.
Yeah, there's definitely cultural differences that I come across even now. Like I've spent a total of 7 years in the States, and even now there are moments where I'll be talking to someone who I've been friends with for years, and it'll be all fine, and I'll say something and they will either have no idea what I'm saying, or they will find something really offensive that I don't see as offensive at all, and then there's this weird miscommunication of like, who the fuck are you? And we have to like figure that out, and that's another thing that I tell my students is like, I am Australian, we speak the same language, but there are cultural differences. And so if I say something that, you know, isn't quite right, or I think often Americans find me to be like maybe a little aggressive sometimes in my like directness. But, you know, like, so America's here in directness, Australia's here, and then the Dutch are here. You know, like the Dutch.
What?
The Dutch are super direct. Yeah.
What is your musical/artistic heritage or lineage?
Oh.
So could be who you studied with or anything.
I'm the only really musical person in my family for quite a few generations. My grandfather played harmonica a lot, which was pretty cool, and had a very loud, booming singing voice, which was just really lovely. But apart from that, my parents took me to see the symphony orchestra a lot as a kid, and so I would often like fall asleep to classical music or orchestral music at least. And this is a total tangential story, but when I was a bit older and I was employed as a substitute percussionist for that orchestra, and it was my first job, and I'm like getting paid to play triangle, and I'm thinking this is amazing, and I'm sitting there counting my 287 measures of rest because that's percussion life.
Yes.
In the performance, I started to nod off because it's the dim lights. Yeah,
right.
It's the dim lights, and it's
warm.
just the sitting. Yeah, exactly, and it's warm, and it's this music that I used to fall asleep to as a kid all the time. And in that moment, I was like, yeah, well, percussion, you know, orchestral percussion is just not for me. I can't do this. Like, I can't be falling asleep in my job. But yeah, so when I was. I think you know, like most people who have any music in their life, started on violin when I was 5 or so. And then when I was 8, I remember distinctly walking up to my mother and saying, I want to play drums. And my parents were fantastically supportive, and they said, okay, cool. So I started having drum lessons. And then this wonderful lady, Genevieve Wilkins, she was doing her teaching practicum at my school when I was like in 8th grade, and I started having lessons with her, and we are the same person 10 years apart. It's wildly crazy. And so she was my teacher for a long time, and then got me into the university system. But from the age of like 8 or 9, I knew I wanted to teach percussion at a like university level.
Wow. Yeah, that's very...
Wow.
But I've
Very
always
young.
been open to other things.
Sure, yeah.
I've always like had a list of backup professions, like psychologist,
Dog walker,
park ranger, which, you know, I didn't really know about until I lived here. But,
Sure, yeah.
Swear to Lord. Oh, man. Going for it.
Do we get a prize?
Yes, we do.
Oh, what?
We have a prize.
You have a prize? What?
Now, what do they call fanny packs
Really?
in Australia?
No, this is really exciting because
Oh, no.
because I've always been anti fanny pack, but my husband got a fanny pack and he is dedicated to his fanny pack. He loves it. and I always laugh at him about it. But recently I've like wanted a fanny pack because they're just so damn useful.
They're very useful.
Thank you very much.
We're all converts.
Oh, sweet.
OxM swag.
I lost everything in life
OxM
until
swag.
we had fanny packs.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I found it all.
They're awesome, especially like riding your bicycle around, like having a fanny pack instead of a backpack is super useful.
Are there similarities between dance and percussion or theater and percussion? I see a lot of, like, when you're using these multi-instrument setups, it's like, it looks like there's choreography. And then also, seems to me, when I've seen you perform or Steve perform, there's like a theatrical aspect. You're thinking about your voice and your face and in kind of a different way than I might when I'm playing the cello.
Yeah, I think a lot of other instrumentalists are limited in what they can do, right? Say clarinetist, both of their hands are busy and their face is like spoken for.
Sure.
They can't really do much with their face and make a good sound.
Yes.
And so, and cellists, you have a little bit more room to move. But I always find it interesting watching an orchestra because like different instrument groups move in the same way most of the time because you have a limited like range of what you can and can't do.
Right, especially sitting down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so with percussion, for sure, it's very gestural in a way that other instruments aren't, or at least we have, I would say, a lot more range of gesture and movement that we can employ to do what we're doing. And the other interesting thing is that, say, like a snare drum, you can't make a snare drum do a long sound or a short sound. You can do multiple sounds really, really quickly to make it kind of sound like a long sound, like you can do a roll, but you can't hit a drum and make it sound longer or shorter without like pressing the mallet into the drum. But how you gesture it actually changes how people hear it. So if you hit something and you go, it will give it resonance. But if you go, it's like staccato. Yeah. Yeah, so you can kind of like trick people into hearing stuff that's not happening.
Sure, with the visual.
Yeah, with
thing.
the visual
Yeah.
kung fu. Yeah.
We played the Water Concerto, Tendon's Water Concerto,
yeah.
in November, I think it was. Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, October, November.
Just a couple months ago. And I was also noticing kind of some theatrical elements to that, and that was actually everyone's favorite part, I think. I had a lot of students who came to that performance, and that's what they were just kind of gushing about at the end. Was there was humor, there was like a lot to connect to. And I think I kind of envy percussionists in that way because I think there's a lot of stuff that you can do to connect to an audience more so than maybe I can.
Yeah, well, I also think that something like the Water Concerto, where we're literally playing water in a big bowl, if we didn't do all of this kind of theatrical, gestural stuff, we would just be splashing around in water. And so
Sure.
that's the difference between like taking it from being an object to a musical instrument is like is that gestural, theatrical language that you employ.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, so like if I played cello, it would be me interacting with an object.
Sure. Sure.
But you playing cello, that's music, right? Same thing. That's such a shit sound.
Well, this is going to be my follow-up to the first question, but blurring the lines between object and instrument, and you kind of already spoke to this a little bit, but like in your estimation, is it kind of limitless in terms of what you could create, what you could call an instrument?
I think it's a fantastic grey area, right? Where, say you're playing a car, for example, that would be it's still an object, but you are, I would say, like you could be playing music on the object, but it's still an object. But I think it's a grey area, and grey areas are good. I think we generally work too hard to categorize things and say exactly what something is and isn't. And I really like the idea of like, oh, maybe we just don't know. Maybe it's both, and that's okay. So I think that most objects you can make into a musical instrument somehow, but it would only be temporary, if if that makes sense.
Sure.
You know,
it
like
goes
you
back
can't.
to its object status.
As soon as you stop interacting with it in some gestural way and making sound with it, it goes back to object status. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a little magic spell
Sure.
situation.
Yes. Like you were talking about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
And then there's so many instruments. You know, I have the one. Nina plays multiple. But do you have a favorite among all of the ones that are at your disposal?
My standard answer to this question is that I love percussion because I get to play so many instruments. I think if I was on a single instrument for my life, and there are percussionists who just play marimba, right? Or they're just timpanists in an orchestra and they're just on the one thing. I like variety. I like to be able to jump around and play different instruments. But if I had to choose one, tam-tam, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there an object that you can't help but go like, I'm in public or like some like situation, you're like, I just want to hear what it sounds like.
Oh, yes.
I want to hit it.
Wait, I have one right here, actually.
Oi.
The good old metal bowl. Yeah, they're always fantastic. I cannot walk past a metal bowl anywhere and not hit it.
That's
Every
awesome.
time.
What do you do with that?
What do you do with it? Yeah, you can.
What
It
else?
depends. You hit it. It depends on the bowl, but a lot of them have this really nice resonance on the side, like a Tibetan singing bowl, prayer bowl. Some, maybe not this one. Some, if you hit them hard enough on the bottom, they actually have a pitch bend, which is really nice. And you can do long strokes and dead strokes to get different sounds. If you're wearing a ring, you can do that. Yeah. There you go.
I feel like applause is not the appropriate response to what you do. Singing or something.
Spin that wheel, Nina.
Oh, wait.
Oh.
We got it. Okay, go.
I'll do some gestures.
Does sound kind of mysterious.
What is a kangaroo?
Oh my god. Kangaroo, it is one of the two animals on the Australian, what's it called? Emblem thing? Emblem?
Seal?
See,
No.
Crest? No. The thing.
Sure.
There's a kangaroo and an emu surrounding our thing. We eat both of them. So which is really hilarious because in America, right, you've got the bald eagle, but
right.
you can't eat
It's
that
protected,
thing. That's that's a big no-no. In Australia, however, kangaroo is delicious. Emu's pretty good. Yeah.
Interesting.
But kangaroos are gnarly. Like they seem, they're herbivores and they seem pretty chill, but they actually have really, really strong back legs and very big like talons on their back feet. And they can lean back on their tail and kick you with their back legs and they will just disembowel you in like one shot. Oh, yeah. The boomers
Kangaroo.
are like the big male kangaroos, boomers, and they like 6'4" when they're like standing up looking at you. I had one running directly at me once and it was like 6 feet away and we made eye contact and I took a flying leap onto a nearby tree and it went straight past me and it was really scary. And they're gnarly. So they'll do this thing where like if a dog is chasing them, they can swim. And so they'll go out into the water and the dog will follow them out in the water and then they'll turn around and stomp on the dog and drown the dog. Yeah.
Whoa.
Kangaroos are gnarly.
They're bipedal. That's one of besides birds that don't have.
They kind of look like T-Rexes.
Yeah. But the
Giant
fact
back
that they
legs.
can like use their tail as like a
Is it like
Tripod.
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's gonna be super cheesy. We need like cats and rainbows.
Would you be willing to please share your arm workout with us?
Playing percussion. Yeah.
I knew it.
I definitely, and moving percussion. Percussion instruments are heavy. You got to move them a lot. That actually really helps. But definitely when I am playing more, my arms are better. But I also think that when I was in high school, I was a rower, and so that also helped. And then I just managed to somehow retain that.
Mm-hmm. The shape. Yes, the rower's shape.
Yeah.
I told my sister I was going to ask you this question, and she was like, "It's from the drums, man. Don't even ask her that question." I was like, "I'm still going to ask." Yeah. And then I was like, she's like, "Okay, well, I'm taking up taiko."
Oh, man. I did taiko drumming for a while in Australia, and holy cow, they are so fit. Our warm-up was a 5K run.
Whoa.
And then a bunch of push-ups and stuff before we would even start playing. And then there would be an hour of just as a warm-up before the day got started. It was crazy. Yeah, it was wild. And actually, taiko's really, I nearly became a taiko player for a while there because it's this fantastic marriage of something that's really physically intense, but to be able to do that for a really long time, you have to fully meditate on the inside.
Yes.
So your body is going crazy, but your mind is
still cool.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that dichotomy. Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think a misconception about breath is that there... pardon me. I think a common misconception... Oh, God darn it! A common misconception about drums is that there is no breath involved. Do you have any observations or reflections on that?
Definitely breath involved. I think we all tend to, and I would be interested if this is the same with cello, we all tend to, before we play a phrase, there's always the breath, because you can't really separate, if you're fully engaged with what you're doing, you can't separate your breath from that at all. So, yes, breath is very important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah, you do the same thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do have to teach people how. I have to help them become aware of that.
Yeah, that's really true, because students, you'll say, okay, go from here, and they'll just dive into it without any preparation. I'm like, no, wait. Think about the tempo.
Yes.
Hear it in your head, then go.
Yeah.
It's an embarrassing question to ask one student, not for me, but to ask my students, are you even breathing right now? So that's my problem, too. I just straight up held my breath for 15 miles down the freeway. I'm thinking about something. And music takes a lot of thought. So sometimes in the same way, we forget to breathe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And then there's that weird thing where when you're really nervous and you feel like you're not getting enough oxygen, but your lungs are full, and you keep trying to inhale because you're not getting enough oxygen, but actually what you need to do is exhale.
Mm-hmm.
Man. Yeah.
Perfect. Your favorite number. You won.
I get all of them.
Ta-da! Let's see. Well, this piggybacks along. How important is an artist's physical presentation? Do you make choices on hair, costuming, etc. to tell a visual story that complements the oral one?
Yes and no.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no, and for me it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about instruments being gendered, and I've been asked what it's like to be a female percussionist, and I'm like, that question always winds me up.
Right.
Because I'm like, well, what's it like to be a male percussionist?
Sure.
Until you're going to answer that one, nope.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I dress for function over form usually. That's what I think about when I'm going to go perform. I'm like, can I perform in this? And that's and that's pretty much it. I want to make sure that that I'm wearing something that suits the occasion or the formality of the occasion, and that I'm presenting myself in a way that makes it clear that I care about what I'm doing. And I can physically do what I need to do in the clothes that I'm wearing, because sometimes that's not that doesn't actually happen.
Yes,
I can't perform in things with long sleeves. Like long tight sleeves maybe, but like loose sleeves no.
Right.
If anything's too like froofy on the front, it will probably get caught on things. Generally don't wear white because drums tend to be dirty, and so there's like, but I'm always thinking about practicality over anything else, and I try to not emphasize my gender actually, because I don't want to be misconstrued as like, oh, that female percussionist. I just want to be a percussionist. I want to, like, ideally a good one, but not the female percussionist.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. We talk about this often, just sort of like how do we
function.
Yes, function, but
Leotards
also,
are great.
you know, we want to have an interesting visual element, but then it's like if you skew too sexy, then no one's going to take you seriously. And yeah, there are just all of these various and sundry aspects that we think about a lot.
Yeah, I try to go with like class, elegance, and like a little bit cool, but I avoid sexy.
Yep.
I tend to avoid sexy.
Form. And specifically for female percussionists, no nipples, I hear.
No nipples.
You can't show compared to a male percussionist. That's the big division.
Oh, as in like at the drum kit you can't get shirtless?
I feel that.
Or
that
what
might
is
be
the
a
body
division.
percussion piece?
Corporal Globicar.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've performed that. So it's a solo performer piece. It's not written for a percussionist, it's just written for a performer, but many percussionists play it. And yeah, you have to perform on different parts of your body. So most people do it in like long pants and topless. But then of course like then the score is written for a man because, you know.
Shocker.
And so
That's right,
women
the new one.
Yeah, so women, we tend to perform it with like a sports bra or something on. Some women do perform it completely topless, and I thought about that for a long time before I performed it. And for me, two things occurred to me. One is I could get all of the sounds that I wanted to get without having my chest exposed. And also I wanted my audiences to concentrate on like what I was doing artistically, and I can't control whether they're going to sexualize me or not, but I can try and minimize that a little bit by not having my boobs out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. In your opinion and viewpoint, what is the artist's role in 2019 and beyond? How do those of us who are highly skilled, trained, educated, specialized find our audience, our niche, our belonging, our value, and make a living?
Oh, that's such a great question. So what's our role as artists in 2019? I think community plays into it a lot. Expanding communities, creating communities that aren't based on things that happen naturally, like location, like gender, like socioeconomic status, like the color of your skin or your sexual preferences or anything like that. So things, finding commonalities amongst people through what we do, I think is a really good thing. And as we were talking about right at the beginning, in finding that one thing that might connect completely separate people and building on that to create a community across divides so that we can try and like break down those divides. I think that that's really important for us as musicians to like get out of our comfort zone, get out of our circles, and to connect people. Yeah.
This has been another episode of OxM, Orchidxmantis. We are here with Fiona Digney. This has been Caitlin Fahey-Crow, Nina Leilani Deering, with support of all of the other members of Orchidxmantis, celebrating beauty, physicality, everywhere, anywhere, all the time, for all times.
Amen.
Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona.
Changed my ear. Thank you, Fiona.
Oh, thank you guys. That was awesome.
All your homies want me, and your homies want me. Don't you ever call me, don't you ever call me. All your homies want me, and your homies too. Don't you ever call me, and they're looking too. Don't you ever call me, and they're ladies too. Don't you ever call me, it's 2 in the morning. While your pager morning. Well, your pager best be on. When it's 2 in the morning. Well, your pager best be on. Best be on. Best be on. Best be on.